So I'm here today to present the results of the July 1st, 2024 valuations for both the two pension plans and the two OPEB plans. Um, uh, this is an even year, so as a reminder, even year is the years in which we do an interim valuation. So generally speaking, and on the odd years, we do a full valuation for all the plans, and we update the census information as well as the asset information. This year, during the even years, we only update the asset information and we use a projected liability based on the 2023 census information. So this is kind of an interim step. So it does update the costs and produce the actuarially determined contributions for fiscal year 26. Okay, so should I just share my screen with the
Yeah, how about you share
presentation?
your screens?
Okay. So I have four presentations. They're all very, very similar and very look a lot alike. Some of the pages are even identical. So I'll walk through each plan one at a time. Feel free to interrupt with any questions. But this is a pretty straightforward story to this year, and not much to talk about. So, but if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt. And let me just try to share my screen here. I'm used to using Teams instead of where's the sharing?
Down on the bottom should be in the middle of the commands on the
There it
bottom.
is, bright ingrained. Sharing is not turned on. Let's see here. I don't think I'm
I'm
on.
allowing you. Okay, you
Okay,
should be ready to go.
okay. Try this again. And share. All right. So we are looking at the town retirement plan, pension plan right now. So on the first page, we have the membership information. And again, this is as of all this membership information is as of July 1st, 2023, because we did not update that data this year. So this is identical to the information I presented last year. Therefore, I won't spend much time on this page because nothing has changed since last year. If anyone has any questions, feel free to let me know. Moving on, we have the assets. And here we have a snapshot of the last 5 years of the performance of the plan, as well as the asset balances. Fiscal year 24 was a moderate year, better than the return was about just under 9%, which outperformed the 6.25% target based on the plan's interest rate assumption. So therefore, there was a gain on the assets as a result. Looking to the bottom part of the page here, we have the historical asset balances both on a market value basis and an actuarial value basis over the last 5 years. This year, the actuarial value of assets has dropped below the market value of assets, and what that means is that there are more unrecognized gains than the unrecognized losses that have not yet been recognized in the actual value of assets. And then just as a reminder, the actuarial value of assets smooths in investment gains and losses and gradually recognizes them over a 5-year period. So each year, we recognize 20% of any given year's gain or loss, and we do that over a 5-year period. So you can see up top here, we had a large gain several years ago. We're in the last year or so of that recognition, followed by a significant loss. So we still have a couple of years left to recognize that. And then 2 years worth of gains. These outperformed the 6.25% target. Therefore, the net impact is that there's more gains deferred than there are losses, and therefore the actual value of assets is lower. But what that means is that will help to reduce future costs, future contributions in the absence of any offsetting future market losses. So it will help to put downward pressure on the cost to the plan going forward. Moving on to page 3. Here is analysis that we do every single year, and we look at the plan's target asset allocation and apply it against our capital market assumptions and come up with an expected rate of return. Our analysis is yielding a rate of return of 6.1% long term. You can see that here in the middle, 50th percentile over a 30-year period. You're currently using a 6.25% assumption. So you're right around that assumption. given that it's an interim year, we wouldn't update that assumption right now. We'll reevaluate where the expectation is when we do the 2025 valuations,
Jen,
and may or may not come back with a recommendation as a
Jen,
result.
can I
Yes.
interrupt? I'd just like to point out that our actual target asset allocation is 50% equity, 50% fixed income. And the
Okay.
manager has flexibility to go to 60% equity.
Okay, I believe I believe we've talked about this in the past, and while the target is 50-50, the plans have been historically invested 60-40 for the most part.
They have started to gradually reduce the equity so that
Okay.
they're down to 54%.
Okay. So what we'll
Equity.
do is we'll reevaluate that with the 25 valuations, and see how that impacts the expected long-term rate of return, and whether or not that warrants taking a closer look at the interest rate assumption, and whether or not we should be making an update to that.
Yeah, because I think they were between 55 and 56% for the last two valuations.
Okay. So we'll take a closer look at that next year. Thank you. So moving on to the liability, here we have the accrued liability has continuously grown steadily as expected as members accrue additional benefits. So we're up to 107 million as of July 1st, 2024. The funded ratio is holding steady at just over 100%. So, using a fairly conservative interest rate assumption of 6.25 with 100% funded ratio is a very healthy, strong plan at this point in time. This plan is in very good shape. Moving on to the contribution, you can see on the bottom graph here, we're graphing the contributions over the last 5 years, and the actual determined contribution for fiscal year 26 has decreased a bit from the year before, and that is primarily due to the nice market performance over the last year. The liability has grown as expected because again it's a projected number and doesn't reflect any actual experience in the plan, the demographics over the last year. So that has grown as expected, but the assets did better than expected, therefore the cost has gone down slightly as a result. And on this page, this is just the same results that I presented earlier, just the nitty-gritty details and the calculations of the numbers, and then allocation of the contribution to the various different groups within the town.
Jen, just a quick question. There was a big jump in the 23 valuation for the normal cost. I assume that had to do with a significant, because the headcount didn't go up, but a significant jump probably in salaries. But this year we're seeing, we use steady headcount. We're seeing a drop in the normal cost.
Yeah, so the headcount while the headcount is actually steady, we're using a projected number. So we're projecting out what we expect the headcount to be as a 7/1/24, which likely reflects people retiring and terminating over the last year, therefore a smaller headcount.
And no new entrants?
And there would be new entrants, but new entrants will have a smaller normal cost than someone who'd retired.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's the numbers. The last couple pages are just some caveats and whatnot, so nothing to go over there. So that's the town pension plan. I'll move on to the police and fire pension plan next.
Jen, before you
sorry.
go on,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can I just jump in? I wanted to
Sure.
go back to the normal cost. Regarding new entrants, we do have fewer new entrants on the town side because the Public Works Union, the Town Hall Union, and the dispatchers, all new hires go into the DC plan. So we're starting to see, I think we're starting to see some impact from the movement to the DC plan for those groups.
Right, yeah, and if you go back to this, yeah, so that's probably, that would have been reflected in our projections, because we wouldn't replace those people decrementing out. with new hires. Correct. Okay. Moving on to the police pension plan. Again, on the membership side, this is identical to last year. We have not updated that. So I'll move on to the asset side. Similar story on the asset side, similar returns. Both plans are invested pretty much very similarly, so similar returns. Again, the actual value of assets has slightly dipped below the market value, which again will put downward pressure on future costs as a result, absent any future offsetting market losses. And so it's a very similar story to the town pension plan. Moving on here, again, it's the same asset allocation. Again, similar to the town, we'll take a closer look at how the assets are actually invested when we do the 2025 valuations, and may tweak this analysis slightly, and it will reflect updated capital market assumptions, and we'll see where that lands us as far as the expected return, and come back to you with any potential recommended changes as a result. Again, here on the crude liability, it's grown as expected. So this liability is growing, assuming that all the decrements that we expected to happened. We'll refresh actual experience when we do the valuation again next year, and that'll be reflected in the crude liability. And the plan is holding steady at a 95% funded ratio. Again, still a very strong, healthy funded ratio for this plan. But because the plan is not 100% funded, there is some growth here in the contribution. Part of that growth is due to an increase in the normal cost. So unlike the town plan, the expected future new hires are coming in and growing the normal cost a bit, and it's more of a timing of the demographics and where people are in their careers. But we do expect the normal cost to grow a little bit year over year. But the past service cost, that's the component up here in the smaller, lighter green, that's the amortization of the unfunded accrued liability. You can see the unfunded accrued liability is about the same from one year to the next, because the liability grew. The assets grew a little bit better than expected, but that unfunded amount stayed about the same. And it's being amortized over a shorter period of time because we have a declining period, as you recall, and so therefore that amount has grown slightly, and therefore the cost has increased a bit from last year. And then page 6 again just has the details behind the math in the nitty gritty for anyone who's interested in that. Any questions on the police pension plan? All right, we can move on to the town OPEB plan now. Again, a similar story. Sound like a broken record at this point, I'm sure. The membership is the same as last year, so I'll move on from there. Again, the assets had a good year as well. These plans are all invested fairly similarly, so you're going to see a lot of the same results here. The market value and the actual value of assets are just about the same, slightly lower on the actual value of assets, due to substantial amount of deferred gains that are out measuring the deferred losses. This picture is similar as well. Moving on to the liability. The liability has grown as expected from 6.2 million to 6.6 million this year. Your unfunded liabilities holding steady at about 1.1 million and an 84% funded ratio. Now, for an OPEB plan, that's a really good funded ratio in the state of Connecticut. About half the plans in Connecticut do not even have a trust and are not funding. So the fact that you are funding and you're fully funding and you're at 84% is very healthy and very good and very strong. And then moving on to the cost, the actual determined contribution has increased slightly. And again, it's due to the normal cost growing, because this plan is open and there's new people coming in. And also the unfunded liability stayed about the same, but now we're amortizing it over a shorter period of time. Therefore, that past service cost component has increased slightly as well. So overall, the costs have gone up slightly. But all these costs, the costs that have gone up, they have gone up by less than we expected based on last year's valuation, and that's primarily because the assets performed well over the last year. So that's the main reason why. And again, the details on this last page here. Any questions on the town OPEB before I move on to the police OPEB? Okay. Last but not least, we have the police OPEB plan. I'll skip over the demographic information. One thing to note is the police OPEB plan is a closed plan, so you can see that the population has been declining. It will continue to decline. Our projections assume that they will continue to decline. But on the asset side, again, the same results here, almost 9% return for fiscal year 24, a similar relationship between the actuarial value of assets and the market value of assets as a result. Still supporting a 6.25% return assumption. Again, we'll reevaluate that when we do the full valuations next year. The liability has grown as expected to the levels we expected it to grow to. And the funded ratio actually has improved slightly as a result of the investment performance for this plan. And that has resulted in pretty much a flat contribution compared to last year, just over $480,000. And you can see that these components have all stayed relatively flat. Contributing to that is the fact that the plan is closed and there's no new entrants coming into the plan. And again, here are the details at the very end. So yeah, those are the results of the 4 valuations for this year. Being an interim year, there's not too much to talk about. Pretty vanilla for the year, which is sometimes a good thing. But are there any questions? I'm happy to entertain any questions anyone may have at this point in time.
Thank you very much for the update. We appreciate it.
Of course.
Happy New Year.
All right. Well,
All right. No, last call. Questions?
anything else?
No, I think we're good.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Take
Thanks,
care.
Jen.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So if we move down to the next item on our agenda, we have our report on the quarterly invoices and expenditures. It's really for our viewing. If there were any questions, though. Nope, I think we can move on then to the retirement and refund applications. It looked like we had both. We need to vote for both town and for police. Were there any questions on any of them for either plan? No? Okay. Well then, do I have a motion to approve for the town? Okay, Tony, yep, I see your hand went up. Fred, you second. All in favor, okay. Erica, everyone just.
I second.
Great. Okay. And then we have 2 on the police for termination of benefits. So do we have a motion to approve? Jim? Second by Paul. All in favor for the police? Okay, great. Got Mike, Kevin, everybody. All righty. So then our next item is actually a new business item, and I don't know, am I not seeing everybody? Did Brent have to drop off? I guess he must have dropped off. We have the reemployment language discussion. I know Brent was the one that had brought it to my attention. I'm not sure if there was anybody else. Karen, I guess did he work with you to have it added to the agenda and to the plan?
Yeah, I'm going to turn that over to Susan. She's leading that charge.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, we asked to put this on the agenda because a conversation back several months ago with the Board of Ed regarding a potential suspension of pension benefits for someone who was seeking a retiree of the Board of Ed who was seeking reemployment with the Board of Ed, kind of led to a conversation where we all sort of read through the reemployment language in the town pension plan, and it's the identical language that's in the police pension plan, and it's attached to the agendas in case you want to read through it. But
Yes.
it's Article 4.08 in the town plan and Article 4.04 in the police plan. And it deals with reemployment of retirees from the plans. And as we were reading it and trying to work with the Board of Ed to figure out how to handle this kind of situation, we realized that the language is problematic. What the language does is it does allow for the rehire of town and police retirees back to town employment, but it limits the annual compensation that these rehired retirees can make to 1/3 of the annual amount that they were making when they retired. It's very complicated to try to track. The idea, I believe, was to make sure that the retirees could come back without being back full-time. So they can continue to receive their retirement benefits, but they wouldn't be reemployed full-time. And as we were kind of working through this, we're like, this really doesn't make a lot of sense to do it the way that the plan has designed for it to be done, because it kind of, first of all, like I said before, it's an administrative nightmare trying to track it. But not only that, if taking the police for a good example, if you have a police officer that retired, say, 20 years ago, and one that retired last year, and they both want to work as traffic agents, one is going to be significantly limited in the amount of money that they can make on an annual basis simply based on when they were retired. And that didn't seem like a fair way to do it. So, Jen and I were discussing, and Kate, when she was here, the best way to, like, is there a way that we can reword this section that makes it still do what the plan was intending to do, but without discriminating against people based on when they were retired, and also making it a little bit easier to track. And so
Susan, can I ask a question that
Sure.
This may just, my knowledge here is not that deep. So for me, it's still a question, but when you're receiving benefits and you retire, is this tied solely to coming back to our town or to
Yes.
the Darien police? So these retirees could in effect go to the town next door, offer their services to them, and get fully,
Correct.
right? Okay. I want
Absolutely.
to make sure that I'm,
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have made that clear. We're talking about rehiring them back into the same town, back into Darien. Yes, absolutely.
and the thinking in the original, the way we were best able to put it together is really just, it was seen as a way to allow them to work part-time, but the limitation was never really thought about, or nobody really bumped up against it until it's been raised recently. Is that
Yes.
true too? Okay.
Correct. Yep. And I understand what they were trying to do. It's not that it doesn't make sense, that it's just that it's very hard to track, like I said, and it could be, a little bit discriminatory against people who retired a long time ago. And that limit would never go up for people. It's a static number. You know what I mean? So
Right.
if somebody's a traffic agent for 10 years, they're stuck with that same limitation forever.
Right.
So a fair, a more easily managed and a more fair way to maintain the intent of that plan is to limit a retiree's post-retirement employment in Darien to fewer than 20 hours a week. Where we came up with that is that's the definition of a part-time employee per the town's code. And so anybody who works, per the code, anybody who works more than 20 hours a week is required to join our retirement plan. So obviously we don't want to bring back someone who's receiving retirement benefits and then also have them earn more retirement benefits. That's not what the plan was designed to do. And actually, even going back to, sorry, I skipped a part, going back to that 1/3 limit that was there, right now the language says if you do reach that 1/3 limit, you either have to stop working for the year and earn no more, or your pension benefits are suspended until your reemployment period is over. So we're thinking the same thing should apply, but it would be easier if we went by the part-time definition of 20 hours or fewer, or I should say fewer than 20 hours a week. That's a definition that the the plan already has with regard to who is eligible for retirement benefits in the first place. The idea of removing the retirement language altogether in the plan is also that's not really what we want to do either, because if we totally remove that reemployment, I should say, section, then we can't rehire any retirees back. So we don't want to do that, because we certainly want to have the option to retain the experience, the knowledge of retirees that we have had. If they want to come back and work for us part-time, we don't want to preclude them from doing that, but we do want to maintain the limitation that the plan was designed to have. And so we were just letting you guys know that something we were thinking about doing was proposing to the Board of Selectmen to change the language in this section to deal with it more on an hourly basis, as opposed to, a percentage of what they were earning when they retired.
And the hourly is easier to track, so it solves for
So much easier to track. Yeah, we're already tracking
it's
it
all
for
consistent, right?
Right.
On the same
and
page.
it's something we already track for permanent none of our permanent part-time regular permanent part-time employees can work more than 20 hours for the same reason.
Right.
Yep. So.
And because of the tracking by hours, if it turns out that it is, I guess, right now, does that mean that, I don't know what the numbers look like, but somebody might be limited to just 5 hours of working because of this definition?
Right. Yes.
So you get like a substantial benefit, like.
I believe so, because the other piece.
Because for
Right.
the town, right, in terms of what the town will be getting from their employment and contribution to.
Correct.
The town.
Yep, that's a really good way to look at it. Yeah, and I should also say the definition of employee, it's 20 hours, less than 20 hours a week, or less than 5 months a year. So the other piece of it is, if it's a seasonal type of position that the person wants to come back to, they could do it more than 20 hours a week, but only up to 5 months a year. Which is also nice. If you've got a retiree that spends the winter in Florida and then wants to come back in the summer and be a traffic agent, they could basically do that full time for 5 months, as long as it's not longer than 5 months.
Right.
So again, and there would be no cap on the amount of money they can earn. It would just all be about the hours that they
Right.
work.
And it doesn't hurt the plan, because that's the policy for our plan right now anyway. Part-time don't contribute.
The idea, right.
It aligns. Okay.
Did I miss anything, Jen?
Can I ask a question that's a little bit hypothetical? Is it possible to ever come back as a full-time employee? Let's say you started working for the town very young, took the first retirement, and then wanted to come back. Is it possible to do it, or once you retire, that's it?
You can, if you retire and you start receiving benefits. This does allow you to come back and work more than this limit, but you have to suspend your benefit while you're working full time.
While you're working, and you would accrue additional benefits at that time. Okay, thanks.
The only thing that I would add is, for the way the plan is structured, is the pension boards are charged with administering the plan and as fiduciaries of the plan. And then, so that's why we wanted to bring that to you to discuss, the administration of this language, as well as the impact on the plan of any potential change. And then the next step of that is the Board of Selectmen is the policy arm for the plan. So we would bring any language changes to them, and it would have to go all the way through the RTM. They would have other considerations outside of the administration and the fiduciary. There's considerations of, if we go beyond 20 hours, some labor law, some unionization issues, but we don't need to discuss that here because it doesn't impact the administration or the fiduciary responsibility. So we just wanted to gauge get your sense of the challenge with that reemployment language.
Well, if I could, Jen.
So yeah, let me. I'll just chime in. So Susan, Jen, we had a conversation. I'm sorry, I missed part of the beginning of the conversation here, guys. I just had another phone call come in. So part of the way this conversation came up is that obviously the pension plan's been around for some time, number one. Number two, things have evolved in the town, right? The town now has school security officers. The town now has dispatch, as another example. So Sergeant Jimenez, who we met with, who is the president of the union, he did do some additional research. He found that Stanford does make an exception to this rule. So before presenting anything to the selectmen, I asked him some additional questions, so he's going to come back to us just with additional research. So let me send that to you guys or have him communicate with you directly, maybe before we socialize this further.
Yep, definitely.
Okay. But agreed, the 1/3, what we have now, the proposed language going up to 20 hours is definitely an improvement for sure.
So based on that, then at this point in time, I mean, I think unless there are other questions from an administering standpoint, that 20 hours, obviously we'll see if there's additional waiving or what other elements may come to be, but it sounds like that is actually easier to administer. So therefore we'd be actually helping from an administration perspective. And then to my earlier question of any negative impact to the plan, there really isn't that we haven't right? So
Right.
in terms of protecting the plan participants, this does not negatively impact them. So I wouldn't see it being anything that would come against sort of our responsibilities for the pensions, for the plans.
If I could, I would just like to add, this is Patty Renda from the Board of Ed. And I just wanted to add that a 20-hour a week is more than 0.5 on the Board of Ed on some particular jobs. For example, paraprofessionals work a 32.5-hour week for 10 months of the year. So if we do it on an hours basis, I just wanted everybody to be aware that that is actually greater than a 0.5 FTE.
Would that require them to get, what would that?
Well, I just don't remember if the pension plan language actually specifies FTE or hours as
It specifies, the code language specifies after 20 hours, you would be eligible, and not only eligible, but required to participate in the retirement.
Okay, so as long as there's no problem with FTE versus hours, then I don't see any problem with that. But I just wanted everybody to be aware that we do have some employees for whom a 32.5-hour week or a 37.5-hour week is a full week, not a 40-hour week.
Yeah. We can double check that, Patty. I'm pretty sure it only ever refers to the 20 hours, but we'll make sure that that's true.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Mike, I know Chris socialized this with you guys at the last DPA meeting. I just think with the holidays, we just haven't touched base with it yet. He's doing some more research. So once that's all done, maybe we just have a consolidated email and we can meet again on that. Okay.
And then as far as the steps, because I know if there is language changes, it goes through a different process, but is there anything that these boards need to vote on or is this just for conversational purposes that you're soliciting our views?
I think it's the latter.
Okay.
Yeah, Susan, the process is Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and then ultimately RTM, right?
Right. Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Any other comments or questions on this item before we move to the next agenda item? Okay. Then we'll move on to the minutes. They were included in everybody's packet from our October meeting. Were there any comments or any clarifications needed for any of the minutes? Okay, then with that, I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes for the town. Okay, Fred, can I have a second? Looking for a second to approve the minutes for the town. It's Paul. There you are, Paul. Sorry, looking at all the. Okay, and all in favor for the town. And I think that we have. If I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the minutes now because I don't think that. Eric, I know that you weren't there, so we've got 2. So we had 3. So we're all good. Okay, and then for the police, I know Kevin, Mike, and Paul. You were all present for the police so Paul, you motioned to approve. Do I have a second to approve? Mike, okay, up and there's Kevin, so the 3 are in approval. Okay, so that concludes all of the agenda items we have for today. So unless there were any other remarks, we'll look for a motion to adjourn. All right, Tony adjourns. All in favor?
Aye.
Jim? All right. Great.